We are live. You ready for this fanciness, Chris? Watch this. Hey, this is Aaron Price, CEO of Tech United. I am here with Chris Gannon from Captivate Talent. Chris, good to see you.
Your countdown just got me like nervous, man. It's like the 30-second countdown. I was good until then. But happy Wednesday, Aaron. How are you, man?
This is the real deal. I'm doing well. How are you?
The Backstage studio of Tech United has grown like 10x since the start of COVID. It's pretty impressive.
We've really
man.
upped our game, right? It's not
Yeah,
bad.
yeah, I love it.
So I think I met you at the 2016, the kickoff Propeller Innovation Festival, now Propelify. Isn't that right?
Propeller. So I checked. I actually somehow got on your email list in 2015. I did a little search in my Gmail, and I had about 100 NJ Tech meetup invites. And the first one, I think I never went to. So I was like one of those people that never showed up for the first one.
I appreciate that. You know, we have the no-show list of shame.
I'm on it somewhere.
You're on the no-show list of shame.
2015. There you go.
What makes me particularly psyched about your story and us getting to know each other is that Propelify has played some role in you building your own business, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I posted it.
Tell people about Captivate and when you launched.
So Captivate Talent, we launched in 2017, about a month after Propelify. So I posted it on LinkedIn actually this morning, not even thinking of this. 2016, came to the first festival, saw Gary Vee stand up there, curse at everyone and get everyone pumped up. And I was like, this is pretty cool. And I lived up in Boston at the time. And then when I moved back in 2017, you hit me up with one of those emails and you're like, anybody want to volunteer? And I was like, let me get back into the fold in the New York, New Jersey tech scene. And then I volunteered for Propelify. We kicked off investor speed dating. It went well could go on a 100-degree day. And then a month later, man, I kind of was at a crossroads from my career. And I said, I just hung out with all these crazy entrepreneurs. I think I can do this too. And started Captivate Talent the next month.
And now how many people work full-time at Captivate?
We got 8 at Captivate. Hopefully one more in the near future. Yeah, we're going, man. We survived COVID thus far. We got through it. It wasn't easy, but it made us stronger, I think.
Actually, you guys, I think, have done a great job leveraging social to keep the narrative going. But let's get back to for a second about this. Hey, do you want to help out with Propelify? Because you inherited what was not the best organized investor speed dating, right? I mean, for those who aren't aware, we run investor speed dating at Propelify. We have since day one. And we have, I don't know what the number is now, but somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 to 50 investors, a couple hundred entrepreneurs who each get a few to 15 minutes. This has changed over the years. And if you really the logistics required, that sounds like, no big deal. Like, let's get them all under in the same room, so to speak, and they can meet and that'll work itself out. But there are so many moving parts with where do you go? What time do I show up? How long is my meeting? What can I do with both the investors and the entrepreneurs? And frankly, we were under-resourced to pull that off until you got involved. And so now it's a much smoother, much more effective process. And so I'm very appreciative of that.
Well, this year is going to be our first year doing it virtually. So we got it last year. I think we really nailed it last year. And then curveball again, typical Propelify is like, I think that's been the craziest thing. It's been curveball after curveball after every year. And we just kind of adapted and shifted and got through it.
I think that's kind of the theme of, like, I no longer even see them as curveballs. It's just how they're being thrown, right? Like, that's just the game.
If we can't hit a curve at this point, we're not even playing the game.
Yeah, we've had like bad weather, obviously bad weather the day before, which like blew half the tents over the edge of the pier.
Yep.
Speakers in and out last minute, investors in and out last minute, but we always make it work. It's always been a great event.
Yeah, it's cool, and I have to say, Aaron, it's the craziest thing is some of those relationships 3-4 years ago, like those investors are coming back. I feel like I'm part of their network now, and that's not why I did it by any means. It just seemed like a good place where I could help out, and now it's grown into these friendships and this community and this network that kind of blends across multiple channels of whether it's business or social or whatever it might be.
I think that's worth mentioning. A lot of people have said to me, like, why did volunteers get involved? What are they getting out of it? And it's never a straight line, right? There's never a clear path of why this is valuable. But I know you've made some great relationships. Share some of your experience.
I think that's if you're volunteering because you're looking for the thing you get out of it, you're probably doing it for the wrong reason. Like 3 years ago, the thought wasn't in my mind, if I volunteer for investor speed dating, I'll meet some of these great up and coming VCs that might be people that I work with in the future because we deal with recruiting for startups, and like that, those dots look really well connected now. Like looking back, it looks like this master idea that I had, but like that wasn't my thought process going into it. And it just kind of fell that way. And, some might say it even maybe shaped the direction our business went in because of the influence of Propelify. Yeah. So, a couple of years ago, some of these VCs were, they sent their analyst or their junior person, and now some of these people have their own firms, and we kind of came up together with them.
I mean, I think in many ways it's a lot like when investors are curious about, investors get invited to a lot of places, obviously, and so often when they go to an event like ours, they're not quite sure who they're going to meet, and so it's the exact same thing that you just pointed out, right? Sometimes these startups take a turn, they meet a guy like you never quite know where these things are going to go. So I think showing up is a significant part of the effort.
Showing up's, I think, the biggest, the crazy stats. So last year we had terrible weather. It was like 50 degrees. It was rainy. We were on the edge of the pier. You thought you gave us the best spot, and it was actually like the windiest spot on the pier. My team was ready to quit that day on me. And the surprising little statistic that we saw was only 2 investors bailed. And I thought that morning when we woke up and it was pouring rain, I'm like, oh, all the emails are going to start coming in. The investors are definitely going to bail. But all the investors showed up. Actually, more so, we had 10% of founders bail,
which is
and only 2 investors, which was less than 5% of the investors bail. And that was well, hey, maybe these are the people with the money, because they know rule number 1 is show up.
Showing up is a big deal.
And it worked great because we've learned to have a bunch of people on deck. So we had a bunch of founders on deck that were really happy to take those spots of those because they couldn't get in, of those people that bailed.
What are some of the creative things you've seen founders do to try to get in day of?
Oh, man, I saw we had one company one year that they came up and they all had their hoodies on and their swag on, and then they got back in line and all had their hoodies off, and they were a group of 5. I was like, guys, you already did this, and they're like, oh no, that wasn't us. There's 5 of you, and they had a very specific tattoo on demand product, and it was a very distinct product that you would remember. And I was like, you know what? Get back in line. I admire the hustle. Sure, if we get you back in again, we'll do it again.
That's awesome. So tell me how about Captivate? How are things going? How's the pandemic response been?
Man, it was the biggest curveball thus far. If we want to talk about curveballs, 2020, I laid out a growth plan for my team at the end of the year. We were going to double in size again. Our revenue goal was projected to be double in size. We went, I was recruiting in the recession in 2008, 2009. And in March, man, it was the second week of March, somebody turned the lights off.
Yeah.
And it was my role changed from this cool boss, I'm running a company, to all of a sudden I'm responsible for these people's mental well-being, because my team's separated now. They're separated, they're remote. We had to adapt to that really quick. And now we're in a pandemic. Everyone's scared. And by the way, we have nothing to work on.
Yeah.
Zero jobs at one point. I'm like, wow. What do we do? And I'm like, well, we can either stick our head in the sand, or we can make a lot of noise. And
Yeah.
we chose to make a lot of noise, and we tried to do some really good things out there. We held open office hours for people that were looking for jobs, and it was anyone. It wasn't even people that we recruited. If you were an accountant, if you were an IT person, if you were an HR person, we were there to just try to help you. Like, hey, here's somebody to talk to. We'll give you some advice. We'll help you with your resume. And it was just that mindset of like, let's just keep doing what we're doing. Let's work on our brand, and let's just try to do right by people. And maybe we'll come out on the end of it on top.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point that you make. I mean, I think that's one of the things, as feisty as Gary is on stage and in online, that message, is true to his core, is being value add first and become the expert and leader in the space. And I think that approach that you took here, I'm curious if it's paid off. I'll ask you in a second, but yeah, I have so many relationships like you talked about before, where I did something a decade ago that now are showing, are paying off, and however you measure paying off, or becoming valuable in ways I never could have imagined. Even the way I ended up at the, what was the New Jersey Tech Council was related to that kind of relationship building. And so I wonder, in your case, like, it's a little early since this is only 6 months in, but have you even seen any of those, people who you tried to help out who were struggling to find work? Have any of those brought in other clients?
So it's funny that you brought up Gary at the beginning of that, because at the first Propelify, one of the things that resonated me, which was give, just always give, and don't expect anything back. Like if you're giving at least 51% and only expecting like 49%, I think he said, which doesn't always make sense when he says things like that, but never expect anything back right away. That's how I saw my father do business too. So that clicked with me, and I'm like, all right, now I run a business. I'm in charge, and that's my motto. And running a business up to COVID and continuing to do it that way has paid off. Like, I will always do something in the sense of, if going out of your way or trying to help somebody or just talking to somebody that's a referral, even if you can't help them. And can you measure it? I don't know if I can. I don't even think I try to measure it, honestly, at this point. Does it come back to us? I hope it does. I think it does.
I would chime in, but I was muted because of this massive fire truck.
I thought I lost you. I thought it was me for a second.
I was like, yeah, value's good. No, but I'm with you on that. I mean, it is hard to measure, but I think when you start to look back, it becomes clear where certain relationships pay off, and where certain efforts that you make a real impact, whether it's on your own career or someone else's.
Well, I think for us too, I mean, dealing, like, we're in sales, like recruiting sales, even though, some of those sales groups don't let us in. They don't think we're salespeople, but we're selling one of the biggest decisions in somebody's life. It's where you're going to live, who your partner is going to be, and where you're going to work. We're dealing with one of those situations every single day. And back in March, like, we had to be really empathetic and understand, like, these people, like, people are scared and they're hurting, and now they don't have a job. Like, the thing for us every day as a team was, like, we at least knew every morning we were going to log online, and, like, I don't know, at one point I was wearing a Hawaiian shirt. I had a big beard out to here. Like, we're going to try to laugh through it together. And I could only imagine, like, what that would have been like if you didn't have that. If you were stuck in your New York City apartment, the world was falling down around you, and all of a sudden you didn't have a job anymore.
Yeah.
Like, that's a scary time. And, like, we talk about, like, mental health through this, like, you all of a sudden realize, like, you can't say no to these. Like, you have to help people in some way, shape, or form. You have to be out there to help people.
I mean, talk a little bit about, Nick. I think you've done a great job on culture, on social media. You guys are posting great things. You talked about even, like, the Hawaiian shirt and the beard and some silly stuff. But I think you make a big difference. Tell me some of the things you guys did over the course of the last 6 months.
So we made a blooper video. That was one of the first things we did, because we were on all these Zoom calls all of a sudden with each other. And before, like, Apple made a cool commercial or anything like that, we had the first Zoom blooper video out there. So I'm going to take that one from Apple. Like, that was us. Nice. We'll talk to them later about that one. But, everyone did, like, the Zoom happy hours, and, like, we played games together and all that kind of stuff. But for us, it was about just trying to connect with people that were in our networking groups, like our brands. Like, can we host these things? Can we give people, like, interview tips for video interviewing? Like, we didn't have anyone out interviewing at one point, but we're like, we could help people at least know what to do on a video interview, because we had clients that were terrible about it pre-COVID, that wouldn't turn on their cameras, or like wouldn't check that their camera worked before they started the interview and stuff like that. So
one of these things. Is it working?
Or they're up here and the laptop's down there, or the lights are off and they're in the dark and you see like a glare from their face. So we tried to help people with that. We wanted to be a brand out there too. So we had a little fun internal contest about who can get the most views and stuff on a post and who could be creative. And it really, I think, allowed us to connect with people that like wouldn't know who we were normally. I think when we had this contest about the most posts, who can get the most views on a post, a girl on my team went for a walk every day with her mom, and they play a song when they went for a walk, and she videoed it. And like she had like 300 likes on it. There was like 20,000 views in like 2 days, and it was just her showing like this personal part of who she was. Yeah, and I think connecting with people externally really helped us as a company, but also made us feel like we're more part of the community that we work in.
Yeah. How does Captivate? You have a lot of competition in this space. How do you differentiate when you're talking to prospects on why they should work with you?
We're nice. We're transparent. So two of our big values that we recruit on are be human and trust and transparency. If you think of the quintessential used car salesman or the recruiter, they're always trying to like snake you out of a deal. But when I started Captivate, my thought process was I was never going to push somebody to take a job they didn't want. I was never going to be
frustrated with your prior experience that you felt like you were pushing people into roles they may or may not be happy, and you just were trying
it was always about the company. It was always about the bottom line. It was always about the revenue goals. And, I get that. You have shareholders to answer to, or you have a goal that you have to hit. Maybe you do sacrifice those things. But for me, that just didn't make sense, because pushing somebody into a job they didn't like, they would just hate me. And it's like playing checkers instead of like helping somebody, and maybe they don't take your job today, but maybe they come back to you tomorrow because they need to build their team and they liked how you treated them, and then they hire their whole team with you.
Yeah.
So like, is there a benefit for us being great people? Of course there is, but that's not why we do it. It's just try to be a good person out there and recruit people the right way, and realize that you're dealing with this big decision for them. Yeah. It's not just a job for them.
It is a little sad that that's a differentiating factor, but I know that it really is.
It's really hard to put that in like a PDF when you send it to a client. Like,
I swear we're normal human beings. If people want to work with you, where can they learn more?
Oh, there it is. Right down there. CaptivateTalent.com.
Yeah. What kinds of companies? So on the talent side, who do you want to hear from? And on the potential company side, who makes a good fit?
So we work with revenue professionals. So sales, marketing, customer success, sales engineers, operations, anybody who touches the revenue umbrella is really what we specialize in. And we've built out our executive search practice this year because our approach is a top-down approach. We'll get the VP or the CRO in there, and then we'll build their team all the way down to like the SDRs or the junior marketers or whatever it might be. And our specialties, we only work with early stage and growth stage technology companies. So seed to Series B, Series C, that's our bread and butter, because for us, that allows us to work side by side with them and help them grow and offer some of the other things that we go and do beyond just traditional recruiting.
Yeah.
We'll train your team how to interview. We'll benchmark all your salaries. We'll help you build out a comp structure if you need to. I mean, last week I was on the phone with the CEO talking through comp structure with them. That's not part of a recruiter's typical duty.
Yeah. And I think it's worth pointing out, Captivate helped us bring in a head of business development also over the course of the pandemic, and hugely appreciated that. Devin's working out fantastically. So we've actually worked with you, and I can attest to the quality of the experience. It was fantastic.
You guys were a tough client, man.
I'm not surprised to hear that. I hear that sometimes. Normally I'd be like, oh, really? But like, yeah, I'm not surprised. We've a high bar.
But that's what we're used to, though, too. I mean, it was. We got down the road pretty far with a couple people. We had to start from the beginning a few times, and that's so normal. I remember you were like apologizing to me like that you couldn't hire somebody that we liked. And I was like, no, man, that's just we're used to that. Like that's part of the game. Like, let's just go back and we'll find somebody else for you.
I was bummed about that. What are some? You said you talk to people about interview prep. What questions or what process do you recommend?
So the thing that we're finding now is it's really hard to mirror the coming in the office, sitting there for 3 hours on a video. And we've seen some companies like they put five people on a video. And they're like, oh, it's a group interview. And it's like a 5-on-1 Zoom. I think that's really difficult if it's not planned really well with the team beforehand. Like, what are you going to do? What's your purpose in this? Because then you're trying to talk over each other. So video interviewing is actually throwing a little bit of a curveball. I've seen it it's easier for people to interview because they're at home, so they don't have to go sneak out into a Starbucks or make up a doctor's appointment. So that's a pro. But the con is sometimes the number of interviews in an interview process has increased because you're just trying to connect with a person that much more. And, 45 minutes in person is hard to replicate on a 45-minute Zoom call.
Yeah. So what do you recommend to people to do in those scenarios?
Have a longer interview. Don't just schedule a half hour. Make it an hour and make the first half of that interview maybe just getting to know somebody. Have a virtual happy hour maybe with them. As much as, the virtual happy hours I don't think are as popular these days as they were back in March and April.
Yeah. We were crushing it with happy hours in March and April, but
it was like every night was a happy hour in March and April.
Yeah.
But try to integrate them into that team atmosphere and team environment. The process might be a little bit longer, but somebody's okay with interviewing a couple more steps because they don't have to leave the office. They don't have to sneak out. They don't have to make up an excuse as much. But also from the client side, I would say be flexible. Like you might have to have that interview at 6:30. That might cut into family time, but this individual you're interviewing might be back to back on Zoom calls all day, and they might need an hour at the end of the day to rest and relax and decompress before they interview with you.
Are you finding that people's offers are changing? Like what's the new need of employees now?
So I think before COVID, the market was pretty wild, to be honest. It was the wild, wild west. Salaries were getting pretty blown out of proportion. I think the pandemic has kind of leveled things off to where they should be. Yeah. So I don't think there's this premium discount on talent anymore. It doesn't seem like it. I mean, all the offers we've gotten over the last month or two have seemed pretty in line with market rate. But at the same time, there is this idea of, there's all this good talent out there. There are some great people out there still looking for jobs, but the really smart companies, the really strategic companies that were in a good position in March, April, May, they scooped up some of that best talent that was available back then.
Yeah.
So there's not a ton of just good talent hanging out there anymore. So because of that, our clients are hiring carefully and more strategic, and they're not just racing to the finish line anymore. It's not, I need 10 people by Monday. Hey, I need the right person by next month.
Yeah. Interesting. Are you finding that people are culturally are more flexible with, like what work-life balance used to be a signal towards, well, maybe this person's got 12 other things and they're not going to be as committed. But now I think people have a healthy respect for home life. Are you finding that's changing in the interview process? What people are looking for with the balance for their needs?
I think work-life balance has put a lot of people. I mean, think of this scenario like you were a dual income household. You had daycare during the day, your school during the day. Now all of a sudden, and maybe you didn't work in a place that was great for work-life balance, and because of that, the team you ran didn't have great work-life balance. Yeah. Now all of a sudden, you're home with both of your kids, and you're the person saying like, I need work-life balance because I have these two kids that now I'm responsible for every day. So I think it kind of flipped culture on its head. I think work-life balance is confused, honestly, right now. Nobody knows what it is. I read there was an article the other day that said single people actually feel like they're doing significantly more work. People without kids, because they don't have that shut off or that hard stop, like, hey, it's dinner time, and then I need to go do homework with them. They're just working straight through, and burnout, I think, is a big issue right now. So when you think we're in this remote world and we're all living these happy lives, like working from the beach, I think the reverse is happening a lot of the time too, where people are just, I mean, I've worked more in the last 6 months than I think I've ever had. Yeah. And I was running my own company. So like,
I can relate. I mean, you don't have the same cadence in the morning of maybe getting yourself ready and showering and like, getting yourself into professional mode and then driving or commuting somewhere. You may just roll out of bed and get going.
Open the laptop, throw on a hat.
Yeah. I mean, it's a different, and so you're putting in hours differently. I am one of those people who's in that position of trying to juggle the kid situation, and it's a real challenge.
I stayed at my parents' house for part of COVID, and I just remember my mother looking at me at like 5:15, and she's like, 5:15, time to stop working. And I just looked at her and I was like, no way, man, come on. She can't. Trying to save my business right now, Mom. It's not 5:15 quitting time.
There's no whistle that just went off, unfortunately. For investor speed dating, for those, so let's talk about the kind of entrepreneur who should get involved. What are we looking for? I think we still have a few slots open.
We have a few. Yeah, I'm looking at the sheet right now. We got a few slots open. We're looking for seed, Series A, even pre-seed maybe. 3 employees, have an actual product. Okay. So as much as we admire the guy on the napkin, want somebody with a viable product. And that's at least moving the direction where they need a serious investment in the next 6 to 12 months.
Okay. And I should back up for a second for people who don't know what, investor speed dating is somewhat obvious, but Propelify overall as an experience is happening October 5th through 9th. The theme this year is a better future for all. We've got fantastic speakers every day on a variety of topics. About 10:30 to 2 are the talks. And I think at 2 or 2:30, or 2 o'clock, we start investor speed dating. Yep. How much time does each founder get with each investor this year?
So we're doing 5. You get 5 5-minute pitches.
5 5-minute pitches with real active investors.
Real investors.
We've had companies in the past actually get investment based on the relationship. You're not walking out of this event with a check, but you are walking out of this event with a potential for a real relationship, and some of those real relationships have yielded investments.
Yeah, and the investors, you see the same people kind of coming back, and they all know each other every year a bit. They're all connected. So I've seen them before sit there and go, I'm not the right person for you, but I know somebody who is, and like point out an investor that's like waiting on the side for their turn to come up next and stuff like that. So they're great. I mean, the community that they've formed, like passing people along back and forth, introducing each other to each other. I mean, it's great.
Yeah. And so for investors, and if you're interested in getting involved as an investor or as a startup, go to that URL, propelify.com/startupISD, which is investor speed dating -2020. What kinds of investors are we looking for?
Seed, Series A are our ideal targets.
So one thing to put you on the spot, the investor community is not known, the tech community overall is not known for having a strong, diversified representation. This is something that's been a big focus for us this year overall with Propelify. How are we doing on diversity, both on the entrepreneurial side and the investor side? And what more can we as a community, not just for this event, but what more can we do, you think, to make sure we have the widest net and the most representation for these kinds of experiences?
I think people, we're trying to get the information out everywhere we can. I think we've pushed it on LinkedIn. We're pushing it out through the actual groups. We're targeting specific investors that, I asked you, I think yesterday about the female founders, like if we know anyone there, I could get on board. It should be a representation of like what our real world looks like. Not 10 guys that look like me and you sitting there on the investment side of the table. And traditionally, we've had a good mix of racial and gender diversity.
Yeah. Good.
Both on the founder and the investor side.
Good. If anyone watching has suggestions of groups that might not be, that we might not be in front of, please let us know. We want to make sure it's widely available. Anything else that people should know about the investor speed dating experience overall?
If you participate this year, I can guarantee you will stay dry. And unless you have the heat turned all the way up in your apartment, you will not need a change of clothes because you are sweating through them.
Yeah, that's a good point. But what you might need is better lighting than the sun that's like ruining my Zoom, my
Yeah,
experience.
we'll have very, very detailed instructions about how your Zoom should be set up for investor
How
speed
not
dating.
to do this.
Yeah.
The half light situation.
Make sure you're not sitting in front of with a window behind you and you look like you're the angelic investor.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate all the time you've committed to Propelify over the years. It's been great to have you involved. It's been great to see your story unfold. And I mean, for me, there's a bunch of people, Chris knows all of them, but who volunteer for this group, and many of us have become friends. And it's really a very special thing when all of us have gotten together from different walks of life to form this pretty amazing group behind the scenes that makes this happen. This year, combining that group with the talent at Tech United has been especially impactful and helpful. But I think it's going to be, minus the fact that we can't actually meet up in person, I think we've got one of our best programs yet.
Aaron, I'll leave you with a little Propelify connection story too. So Todd Ginatazio, who most people that follow Propelify know because they usually get an email or two from him. A couple of years ago, he referred me one of his good friends when I started Captivate Talent, and we actually just placed him last week.
Oh, wow.
In a new job. Yep.
And that's the thing, right? Like, it goes around, comes around. You never quite know who's.
So it was
around.
Funny. I called Todd. I'm like, 3 years in the making, man. Thanks for that referral.
So and that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Very cool. Todd's a great guy. All right, man. Awesome. Well, we're gonna end on the virtual high five. 1, 2, 3, boom. We'll see you soon. Check out Investor Speed Dating. Chris, thanks so much, man. Check out CaptivateTalent.com, and hopefully we'll see you at Propelify in October 5th.
Thanks so much for having me, Aaron. Take care, man. Bye-bye.
Thank you.